Hey everybody. In my previous video, I was talking about how people can opt out of the system such as it is in order to promote change in our society. And when I was talking about opting out, I was talking about doing things like uh, becoming more self-sufficient in order to not feed into the system as much. When you're self-sufficient, you don't uh, spend as much money into the system, which might hurt the system. Um, you could also learn to do with less, which would also not feed into the system. And you could also avoid paying taxes by working within the system less if you're self-sufficient and doing doing less doing less that requires money, I should say. Um, and I also advanced the idea of forming buyers' unions to organize and put pressure on companies that way. I also talked about voting for third parties. Um, People could also help third party members or candidates and and campaign for them. Um, and I'm just wondering, would people really want to do this stuff? Okay, why don't they do this stuff already? That's another question that I could ask. Um, well, when I asked that question, I think of a conversation that I had when I was 17. This conversation was with this guy Renzo from my high school, and this was in 2003, and this was before we actually went to war in Iraq, and I was speaking out against that war in class, in history class, and I was basically saying that if we were to go to war, um, even if there was some problem over in Iraq that we needed to solve, we would be basically as bad as the people that we're condemning, because we would have to kill a lot of people um, as we go into war. Okay, and this provoked a huge response from the people in my history class, and yeah, pretty much the entire class was against me. And Renzo heard about this, and he messaged me online through AOL, uh, and he told me, well, everything is the way it is for a reason. Okay, and his point was basically that I should sit down, shut up, and not speak out, because it's not going to change anything, because everything is the way it is for a reason. And that idea has kind of echoed in my mind ever since. And I've been thinking about that, and thinking about whether people would want to actually do things to change the system. Um, and those two questions are related, because, well, if change is going to happen, then people are the ones who need to do it. So, if Renzo's idea is true and nothing ever changes, then no one's going to want to do what it takes to change the system. So, will people want to do what it takes to change the system? Well, I think that people try to make changes when they have a clear incentive to do so. And I'm thinking right now of the French Revolution. I'm not the expert in it or anything, but I've heard that it had a lot to do with starvation. There was famine at the time. I mean, there was wealth inequality, and that had a lot to do with it as well. Um, but there was starvation, and from what I understand, it took that starvation to finally tip the French people over the edge and begin the French Revolution. Um, Again, from what I've heard in passing from various programs like the Thomas Jefferson Hour, for instance. That's a podcast that I used to listen to. Um, so anyway, is it the case that people are going to need something as extreme as starvation before they make a change in their society? Well, maybe. I mean, there are a lot of people who only respond to short-term incentives. And of course, if you can live from one day to the next without really pulling off a revolution, or without really having to change your life drastically, if you can just go from one day to the next fairly easily, are you really going to want to change, or is the average person really going to want to change? Um, well, I think that the answer to that question is they're not going to want to change. They're not necessarily going to want to change. Um, I think that at this point in our development, at this point in our society, we have a major problem, because as there's more and more wealth inequality, our society is still getting richer, and so the bottom half of Americans now have 1.3% of the wealth in this country, and that means that they have a small share, but because this country is so rich, that 1.3% means a lot. It's a lot, right? So people can still live off of that. So if people do not have an incentive to go through huge changes in their life, like opting out, growing their own food, stuff like that, or even causing a revolution, like an armed revolution, if people don't have an incentive to do that unless they really need to, then you can see the problem, right? I mean, that 1.3% goes a long way, and it feels like we're not going to get to the point where people are going to want to drastically change their lives in order to fight the system. It seems like more people have an incentive to just go along with the system as opposed to fight it. So I really don't know what to say beyond that. It just seems like a problem. There's the idea of trying to get people informed, trying to get people woken up to the problem. I'm not sure awareness really is the issue. I think that the Occupy movement did a pretty good job of getting the idea of the 99% versus the 1% into the public consciousness. I mean, now everybody has heard the term 99%, or if you say, hey, the 1% is taking all the wealth, they're going to understand exactly what you're talking about. So I mean, I'm not really sure awareness is the key. Maybe if anything, it might make sense to tell people that they'll feel better about themselves if they resist the system. Maybe the selling point could be, oh, we need to resist the system because we want to feel good about ourselves. We want to feel like we're being ethical. We want to fight for the good as opposed to not resisting the evil. So that's one way to approach it. I'm trying to think of other possible ways to approach it. Trying to promote long-term thinking. Trying to get people to realize that it'll be better if they resist. I'm trying to think of other stuff here. I don't really have any other solutions, and it doesn't feel like anything really is going to change in the future. So my outlook is pretty cynical and pretty bleak, and I would love it if other people could kind of refute what I'm saying here. So if you have any comments, you can get in touch with me on Twitter and through email, and you can find out how to do that by looking in the description box under this video. Thank you.